This is Night Phoenix here with another base-based related video. Today I just got this package in the mail for the base-based playmat. As you can see, it has the Legion zones on top and the artifact zones on the bottom, along with your legendary monster zone in the bottom center. On the left, oh, and it's a quad fold, that's why it's kind of flimsy like this. On the left, you have your active leader stats, and your right has the passive leader stats. As you can see, the passive leader has the level and HP, or health. And that is, of course, to keep track of your passive leader's health, whose health will change depending on various card effects or abilities. Your active leader, although their health will, of course, change with their level, there aren't any abilities or card effects that subtract health from your active leader, aside from an outright attack on it, of course. And you can take power token and just put it on top here. Oh, let me just set this flat. And of course, just move it around, back and forth to keep track of everything. Additionally, with this playmat, you can get a custom deck. The particular one that I chose was a combination of several different elements. I chose Mistral, Light, or Lucent, Pyro, or Fire, and Aqua, or Water. Now, normally you'd want a max of about 3 different elements, but I was just playing around, trying to see what worked best. So, to go through this deck with you quickly, first, we have the legendary monster. The legendary monster, of course, goes right here on the playmat, and you only get one. For this particular one, I chose Gubio, the stitched cardinal wolf. And if it can just focus here, oh my gosh. And essentially, it is unaffected by the abilities of any of your opponent's units. It cannot be ordered to leave the base unless ordered to be embedded in a legion that is in the same column that a Zimpel card is played on. I have a couple of those, so I will get to those in a second here. But essentially, this is like a guard dog kind of type card. It's pretty powerful, and it requires 3 Griffin as a sacrifice. Unfortunately, there is a typo in unaffected, and that just really bothers me. Moving on, because I will fix that later. Don't worry about it. The field card that I chose was the Lucent one. This is because I have, well, you'll see in a moment which leader I have. Let me just clear these off really quick. But I like the Lucent card's ability of Mirror, which is for your units, add +2 range for Lucent units, +1 for any other type. This effect does not stack. And that's, of course, for the base format. And then just down here, I like the effect of Luster, because your units are immune from being afflicted with status conditions during the turn that they enter a Luster territory. And I think that'll be really useful in upcoming battles, just because of the detrimental effects of status conditions. So next we have the territory cards. In base-based, you can only have 3 in your deck. However, I have 4 here in the product that I'm selling, just so that you can choose 3 out of the 4, depending on your according playstyle. I haven't quite figured out which 3 I want to do yet, but technically, I have to have the light one because the field card is light, and you have to have your first territory card as the same type as your field card. Next, we have the Zimpel cards I was talking about, the Amulet of Kasu Zimpel, and the Amulet of Meke Zimpel. So the Amulet of Kasuzimpel is a rank 1 artifact enhanced card. The artifact zone this card is placed on becomes an unconquerable territory under your control. It rewards standard production every turn, which is just 1, and constructs can be built on this zone as well. This is significant because normally only territory cards can have a construct built on them, but this allows for an extra space for a construct. Then we have the Amulet of Simpel, and the ability is the artifact zone this card is placed on becomes an unconquerable territory under your control. It rewards standard production every turn times the total number of sentries defeated. So if you have defeated 6 sentries, this rewards 6 power tokens each turn. I just have these as 1 copy for each of those at the moment because I feel like they're necessary in the deck, but you don't need a ton of them. Next we have 2 copies of Muffin MacGuffin, and essentially the point of this card is that you can wager artifact zones between you and your opponent to gain control over more artifact zones, which is of course quite significant because of artifacts being the spell and trap cards of base-based. And then you have to flip a coin and you have to get a certain amount of heads. I will leave up this card so you can just read that description on the bottom there. Alright. Then we have 3 copies of the Well of Mamere. It came out a little bit darker than I was expecting, although that's really kind of my fault because I should have expected that. The Game Crafter always prints out their products a little darker. I have to tweaking effects with the screen mode and making a copy to lighten the card art, excuse me. But this is played at 3 for a combo I will mention later. But what the Well of Mamere does is that once per turn you can guess the name of a card in your opponent's hand. If you guess correctly, you can deal 2 points of damage to your passive leader and destroy your opponent's card. So, powerful effect, but you have to guess the name of a card in your opponent's hand. So it would be really helpful if there was some type of a card that could do that. So keep that in mind. So that's it for the Artifact Enhanced cards. Next we have the Artifact Trap cards. If you recall, Artifact Trap cards can only be played during battle, while Artifact Enhance cannot. So here we have 3 copies of Illustration of the Phoenix. Restore your passive leader's health by 2 points whenever it loses health due to an effect or an ability. And if you recall from the Well of Mamere, we deal 2 points of damage to our passive leader. So this card will restore those points of damage. Then we have 3 copies of the Sigil of Knight and Light. And this inflicts 2 points of damage to your opponent's passive leader every time your passive leader restores health. So now we have a card that deals damage to your passive leader, another one that restores said damage, and another one that inflicts damage to your opponent's passive leader when you restore health. I smell a combo. Then we have 1 copy of Lady Justice. And this is the last artifact trap card in the custom deck. And I figured that just 1 copy should suffice. And its ability is to deal 1 point of damage to your opponent's passive leader each time your opponent draws a card. Or discards a unit army card, excuse me. And the little flavor text here essentially means justice for all. Because the point of this card is to have or to inflict burn damage to your opponent whenever their king becomes kind of tyrannical and is just discarding his own citizens. And I really like this card, the card art, and I thought that the balance with the blue on this side and the red on this side also came out quite well. So moving on to the constructs. First, we have 2 copies of Glass Ceiling. The effect of glass ceiling is that your opponent must deal exact damage in order to defeat your legion. If your opponent deals less, half the damage. If your opponent deals more, add half, rounded down, of the damage as health to your passive leader. So essentially, you have to be very careful about which legions your opponent has to be very careful about which legions they are attacking, because it could spell quite a significant amount of a disadvantage should they mess up and forget this card's effect, and I have it at 2. Then we have 2 copies of Lighthouse. Its effect is that once per turn, send a unit card to the graveyard. Draw 1 card from your deck with the same type as that destroyed card and add it to your hand. So essentially this just gives you drawing power. And then we have the last card for the constructs, which is the mountain. And essentially this just makes 3 tiles that are just really difficult to get by because they have a movement cost of 5. Alright, so now we get into the leaders of the deck. We have leader King Arthur Pendragon, whom you should remember from a previous video, and leader Genius Leonardo, whose effect is Codex Atlanticus, which is based off of a book he wrote in which he submitted tons of inventions and drawings about all sorts of his genius works. So you have the cost of artifacts, and you can double the construct capacity of territory cards. And I think that this is just a great leader to have because of those effects. Doubling the construct capacity is especially significant because now you get to play with double the amount of constructs. Constructs are like spells, but they're just guaranteed to always be permanent. So now to go through the monsters pretty quick, because this is starting to get a little long. We have the Paladin. Oh, sorry, not the monsters, the unit cards. So the unit army, we have a Paladin at 1, Ark of the Covenant for the siege weapon, and another Paladin. So Paladin's at 2 here. Then we have, 3 Crusaders. And that's it for the light types, or again, Lucent. I'll try to just refer to them as the in-game names. Sorry for any kind of a confusion that was causing. Then we have the Bard, who doubles attack and counter for all units in the Legion that this card is embedded in. So that's a pretty fantastic ability. Of course, the trade-off is that he doesn't have any attack or counter of his own. Then we have the Trebuchet for the siege weapon at 2. And then we have 3 Griffins, because you need 3 Griffins in order to summon Gubio. Of course, you can sacrifice a certain amount of cards in order to summon him as well, but it doesn't make sense to not run 3 Griffins just so that you have the option. And that's it for the Mistral types in the deck. Next, we will be going on to the Pyro. So first we have the Sniper, who is the ranged unit in the Pyro deck. And we have her at 4. Then we have the Dragon, always an excellent card for the monsters. And then we have the Cannon at 3 for the siege weapons. And lastly, we have the Aqua type cards. So this is the Mist Spy, whose ability states that once per turn, your opponent must reveal a card from their hand. They cannot reveal the same card consecutively. So this completes the combo that I started to explain at the beginning of the video. Because now you know a card from your opponent's hand with Mist Spy. With Well of Mamere, you can destroy that card by damaging your passive leader. Then, with the illustration of the Phoenix, you can restore health to your passive leader, and then with the Sigil of Knight and Light, you deal damage to your opponent whenever you restore health. And we have the Mist Spy at 2, and then we have the Ice Troll at 3, This has multi-strike, and with an attack of 5, that is going to deal some damage. Now that's a lot of damage. Sorry, I just had to. And its ability is once per turn, negate the activation or the effects of a leader effect. Since leaders are just so prominent within the game, this is an excellent ability. And yeah, can't wait to playtest this deck. Thanks for watching. That concludes the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay awesome, guys.